Welcome. I'm Kinetic Symphony. I hunt down and report on mysterious and weird, true stories, from glitches to the paranormal. This is my channel's weekly compendium, ending on Monday, April 4th, 2022. Case file number 573, written by Anomaly, The Blue Square. This happened to me over a period of about 6 months, about 35 years ago. I have never really been able to get even close to explaining this, and it's hard to put into words, but I'm about to try. The apartment I grew up in was run strictly on regulations. One of them was that the walls were painted pure white between tenants. We were not allowed to paint the walls. The bathrooms were tiny. If you were to sit on the toilet, center of the back wall, the tub took up the entire left wall. The sink and the counter took up the entire right wall. The door opened opposite the toilet and was close enough you could kick out your feet while sitting and kick the door open. On either side of the door, there was about 1.5 feet of pure white wall. I lived in this place for many years, but only for a period of about 6 months did the blue square appear. The blue square was a transparent blue, perfect square that could be seen on the left of the door, about 2 feet from the floor on the white wall. Think the blue glow around a lightsaber, but a small square. It was 2 by 2 inches. It was very much ethereal and not physical, like a foggy light. It was not able to be touched. The square felt like any other part of the wall. I was the only person who could see the square. It was always in that exact spot. I marked it with a pencil, and only in that spot. So I know it wasn't an issue with my vision. I gave up talking about it because nobody else could see it even if I outlined it. Then one day I went to the bathroom and it was gone. Nobody painted over it as my pencil outline was still there. I have no idea what this could have been. Case notes, file number 573. It sounds like some sort of holographic projection, but in a spectral band that others aren't able to witness. Very curious how your eyes or brain are able to process this information when no one else can. It reminds me of a condition I have called visual snow. There isn't much study on it, but effectively I perceive the world through a screen of very fine, tiny static. Think of an old TV turned on to white noise, but not quite as intense as that. The darker the room, the more obvious the static is. It's theorized that this is related to tinnitus. In both cases, the issue isn't with my eyes or ears, but the brain's processing centers for visual and auditory information. Now in your case, I do believe this blue square existed. It wasn't your mind creating it, more that your mind was able to decode the signals. Everyone could receive them, but only you had the hardware to decode it in the visual and conscious representation. What would it mean though? Some form of alien tagging system, perhaps? Or maybe even government-related testing. Case file number 574, written by Peace Love Cali, High-Speed Glitches. This happened to me several times while driving. Times when I must have crashed, or worse, it was unavoidable, yet miraculously, somehow, I didn't. Once, I was driving straight at a 3-way intersection with my child in the car. I was on the street going straight, with another street ending perpendicular to the one I was on. There were no stop signs, so the street going straight had the right of way. A car turning onto the street from the other side would have to yield. Noticing I had the right of way, I didn't think about it, I just drove straight through the intersection, only slightly distracted because I was talking with my son in the car. I was about to pass the street, meeting mine on the right. Except that too late, I saw another car come through the intersection on my right and turn towards me, attempting to make a left turn, but right where we were. It was clear the driver hadn't slowed to see if a car was going through. They just plowed through to make their left turn, as they would if another car was not there. At the rate of speed each of us was going, and as close as our cars were to one another, I could see it was inevitable that we were going to crash. I hit the brake, but there just wasn't enough time to avoid the collision. I was literally about 3 inches from the middle of the other car. I was going to T-bone it. As I braced for impact, nothing happened. My car hadn't yet completely stopped, but the other car was suddenly way past me, Like I said, doing all I could to try to avoid the crash, it was impossible not to collide. Yet somehow, in a mere blink, we did. We both stopped for a minute, full of adrenaline. I looked over at the other driver, and I saw that she looked as confused as I was. Another time I was driving north on Interstate 5 in California, somewhere probably near Bakersfield. As it is for most of the length of the interstate, there were 2 lanes and many cars. I was in the left passing lane, behind several other cars going above the posted 70 speed limit. Unlike most of them though, I always maintain a safe distance behind the car in front of me. Always, except for moments when it's not possible, like when I get cut off or if a car in front suddenly stops, for example. This is what happened on this day, a bright, sunny California day. The air was clear and visibility was perfect. But in my little car, I can only see the car directly in front of me when the freeway goes straight. Unlike in a pickup or SUV or something, where you can see above the cars in front of you, and you can see what's going on ahead for the next half mile or so. I was following at what should have been a safe distance, while still being mindful not to slow down the cars behind me. When suddenly the car in front of me swerved a little onto the right lane to avoid hitting something on the road that they clearly hadn't seen ahead of them. In this slow motion moment, I could see for a fraction of a second that the 4 to 5 cars directly ahead of me in the left lane had all swerved and or stopped, and when I saw the giant thing in the road, I had literally no time to avoid hitting it. I couldn't swerve either. There was a car right on my right side, and a wall with no shoulder on my left. This giant thing looked like a very solid, heavy trunk or something, at least half as tall as my car. Hitting this would have been a pretty major accident, smashing the front end of my little car and causing who knows how many cars behind me going over 70 to crash into me, and so on, into a big pileup. I saw what happened and imagined the rest, all in the single second I had before I would crash into it, hard. There was no possible way for me to not hit it, as I couldn't swerve nor completely stop. It's not possible to go from 75 miles per hour to 0 in 1 second. Like in the previous scenario, I braced for impact, and suddenly, I was past the giant trunk. It happened so fast that I couldn't even see how I got past it, but I did. In my rear view, I could see the trunk was still in my lane, but I had gone through it. Finally, another time I was on the freeway in the left lane, behind a pickup with furniture in its open bed. Suddenly, because of the wind I guess, a large wooden drawer began lifting up in the truck bed, just a few feet in front of me. I couldn't swerve. Again, I had nowhere to go. I slowed down as much as I could before the big drawer would come all the way up and out of the truck bed and crash hard into my windshield because of the speed we were both traveling at. Physics would tell you that at a certain point, when the drawer lifts up higher than the top of the truck bed, wind will take it over, and it can only come out from that point. I knew it was about to crash into my windshield, and who knew how I would survive that at such a high rate of speed? I imagined being blinded by broken glass at the same time that heavy wooden drawer entered my windshield and smashed into my head. I really thought I was about to die. I know it sounds as though I had plenty of time to react and slow down, but it all happened in a matter of a second or two, and I didn't. I saw the drawer lift up higher than the edge of the truck bed, and then it went back down onto the floor of the truck bed, safe from an inevitable, windy, high-speed escape into my head. Again, I was saved by a miracle. I always think of these things as God saying, "It's not my time," and He or a guardian angel intervenes, saving me from the inescapable. But reading all these glitch stories herein, I've realized my experiences really could fit here as well, maybe quantum immortality. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Bonus file, written by Child of Godzilla, a man of sharp teeth and rotting meat. Last night, I read a story about a man who encountered a vampire. His story was very similar to what happened to me when I was young. It haunts me almost 35 years later. This was my response. When I was young, I was walking home, right at twilight, and approached by a man who just seemed wrong. I lived in a kind of rural neighborhood in the desert and knew everybody who lived nearby. I did not know this man. He was wearing jeans and a t-shirt, so that was normal, but everything else about him instantly terrified me. As I walked down the dirt road to my house, he paralleled me in the brush with his gaze locked right on me. The brush on the side of the road is thick and mesquite, and you can't move through it without getting caught up and scratched all to hell. This man moved right through. He never touched a single branch. He actually moved through it. He passed me up and came out onto the road ahead of me, standing right in my path. He smelled so bad, like rotting meat. He smiled at me and asked me to come with him to see a hurt dog. He never blinked and didn't look like he was breathing. His teeth were a disgusting shade of yellow and brown and sharp. His smile was terrifying. His eyes looked cloudy and gray. I remember not being able to move, and though I wanted to scream, I couldn't get a sound out. He reached his hand out and wanted me to take it. Right then, my dog, a big German Shepherd, came sprinting out of the brush, silent and fast. He jumped and snapped at the man's face. The man was so fast, he avoided my dog and was across the road instantly. My dog went at him again, and the man fled into the brush. Again, he didn't disturb a single branch. As soon as the man fled, so did I. I sprinted home, which was a couple 100 yards away. When I got home, I noticed I had urinated in my pants. My dog came home later that night, severely injured. We had to put him down. My dad told me he was in a dogfight. I knew he wasn't. I never told my parents, and I don't know why. Case file number 575, written by This is Temporary, 1213, The Feline Anomaly. So, in December 2020, our cat had 5 kittens. We kept 2 of them. A black one, Lucy, and a gray one, Smokey. We couldn't book the mama in to get fixed due to the pandemic, so she got pregnant again and gave birth to a second litter of kittens in January 2022. There were 4 black ones and a gray one. In February, Lucy got run over down on our street and passed away. 2 weeks later, one of the black kittens also passed away at 4 weeks old. This left us with Smokey, Mama, 3 black kittens, and a gray one. We decided to keep a kitten as a friend for Smokey, as he lost his brother and chose the gray one. I found homes for the other 3 kittens at 10 weeks old. Here's the glitch. The day after the kittens went to their new homes, my partner and I were about to head out camping. We went to get into the car, and a black kitten, same size, age, color, and markings, came running out from under the car. It ran up to me, meowing and purring, so I picked it up and took it inside to clean it up. Weepy eyes. We figured one of our previous kittens had been dumped back at our house, but I contacted the new owners and they all still had their kittens. To this day, we can't figure out where on earth he came from. He is the friendliest cat I've ever met. We planned to rehome him, but it just seems like he chose us on purpose, and I love him too much to let him go, so he's staying with us. His personality is so much like Lucy's too. We never intended to keep Lucy either, but it was the same deal there. Way too friendly and loving for me to give away. Case notes, file number 575. So we know that cats have been revered throughout many cultures in history as supernaturally attuned, even as divine creatures. Perhaps the universe chooses them as vessels of a sort. It's no surprise that the Matrix movie used a cat to symbolize a glitch in the system. A duplication, of course, where one is not possible. Perhaps one of those kittens was duplicated for some reason. Maybe for one reason or another, it's important in both you and your partner's life to have this specific kitten around. Either way, it sounds like you'll be loving caretakers for the little one. I was never much of a cat person myself, but since I had moved to Florida, my roommate there had a cat called Penelope. She wouldn't leave me alone, she demanded my attention, or else. And now I'm in North Carolina with my friend, who has 3 cats. One of them, Ritz, is the same way. Attention now, food slave. But honestly, even though I still consider myself more of a dog person, cats do give off a unique, irreplaceable vibe that I do like. Case file number 576, written by Shab ZXD. An extremely concerning bathroom experience. Okay, This happened 2 days ago, and no one in my friend group can help me figure out a logical explanation. I work in a building with a bunch of different business offices. We share a communal restroom outside in the common area. We can only get in with a key, and only employees from the various offices have keys. I was walking to the women's restroom, and another lady was already ahead of me going towards the restroom too. She had on business attire and black pointy heels. She opens the women's restroom door and pushes it open so I can grab the door before it closes. I say thanks. She's still ahead of me. Now, the restroom only has 3 bathroom stalls, 2 small ones and 1 large stall on the far right. I see her go into the middle stall, and I stand for a second and decide to just take the other small stall on the far left. So now the only stall available is a large stall on the far right. These stall doors and walls don't reach all the way to the floor, so you can see the feet of people next to you and those that walk past your stall. Hopefully this makes sense. I sit down and see the lady's black heels next to me. They were like a particular older style, so they just stood out to me. I don't know, I was just aware of what they looked like. She was already in the middle of her bathroom business. I turn to the other side to grab some toilet paper, and I hear someone else enter the restroom, and I see brown heels walk across from in front of my restroom door. I see this pair of brown heels walk into the stall next to me, right where I had just seen black heels literally moments ago, seconds really, and it caught me off guard. I thought that maybe 2 people were having a meeting in the restroom, if you know what I mean. But no, I only see the brown heels now, and I'm super confused because this was happening in a matter of seconds. So I finish up super quick, and when I step outside, I see that both the small and large stalls are occupied. I bend down and see a black pair of heels in the large stall, and the brown pair in the stall next to me. And now I'm panicked, because I know for a fact that the black pair were in the stall next to me. And this wasn't like minutes long, these were moments. The lady who had on a black pair of heels was like peeing when the other lady walked in. So I don't understand how she suddenly flew into the large stall, materializing through the bathroom stall. I stood in the sink area for a second and was contemplating maybe asking these women what kind of prank they're pulling, but I already felt crazy, so I didn't want to scare 2 random women with what I just saw. I also had this weird, odd sensation that I saw something I wasn't supposed to. The only way I can explain the feeling is like when you get caught doing something wrong. I had goosebumps, and I honestly felt like something dropped to the pit of my stomach. Now, before people say, maybe she was out of toilet paper, etc. These restrooms get stocked every morning, and I don't think I've ever seen a stall run out of toilet paper. Another explanation I've heard is maybe you just didn't notice her changing stalls, which could be the case if she wasn't the first to enter the stalls. She was already in the middle of her business by the time I sat down and situated myself. Again, all this had happened in the matter of moments. The brown heels walked in seconds after we had entered our stalls. So yeah, I can't explain it. I don't know what I saw. I was fully aware and conscious of my surroundings. I didn't even have my phone on me, so it's not like I was distracted. I had slept enough, I had my coffee, and I know it sounds crazy, but that's why I'm posting it here. Case file number 577, written by Aries Tornado. Damien, my cat, has powers beyond this world. First, this just happened, and I want to type it out before I forget. To be honest, I have a terrible memory. I unfortunately picked up smoking cigarettes over the holiday season, and I went back out to smoke. My black cat, Damien, is almost 16 years old. He used to be indoor and outdoor, but as he's gotten older, he rarely goes outside unless it's nice out, and even then he doesn't leave the porch. It is currently raining and cold. I finished my food and came downstairs to go out to the porch to smoke. Damien heard me and came to meow for food and water. I fill both up and he begins to eat. I go outside. Door was locked, everyone else asleep. And as I sit down, he walks past me, opposite direction from the back door, like he was heading to the door to go back inside. I stop because I'm like, stray cat? But I've had him since he was 6 weeks old, and I kind of in shock ask, Damien? And he meows back at me. I let him inside and look around downstairs to make sure I'm not crazy. I mention his age because he's not one to run past me anymore when I open the back door, and even though it's raining, I still look back to see if he wanted to come outside with me. He didn't. He was eating and drinking. I don't know. Maybe there's an explanation, but I was honestly in shock from this classic type of glitch. Bonus file, written by Wacky Wee. My dad took a train into the clouds. When I was 11, my dad died. We knew he was going to die. Terminally ill, lung cancer. His days were numbered, and yet when he moved on to hospice care, we made plans to go visit him immediately after school the next day. He died at 2:46 p.m., moments before my school day ended, and we never made it to hospice to say goodbye. I think he wanted it this way, to die peacefully and not in front of us kids. His departure plagued me with grief, and I felt robbed saying goodbye to him. I'd often wake up in the night and cry myself back to sleep because I missed him so much and I wanted to tell him I loved him one last time. About 5 years after he passed, I had a dream. I was at the train station and Dad was a passenger on the train. I was standing on the platform and the train window was open so we could talk to one another. Dad told me he loved me, but that it was time for me to let him go. I told him that I loved him and missed him and never got to say goodbye and begged him not to go and to get off the train and stay with me. But he said he had to go and told me it was okay and he was happy and I could stop hurting because he was no longer hurting anymore himself. Eventually, the train started slowly rolling away on an upwards track traveling into the clouds. We smiled and cried and waved to each other until the train was so far away I could no longer see my dad through the window and the train disappeared into the clouds above. When I woke, for the first time since his death, I felt peace, like I'd seen my dad and said a proper goodbye. I had closure. My dream was crystal clear, and even today, 25 years later, it's still as clear in my mind as the day I had it. Case file number 578, written by Unusual Goldsmith. I was cast decades back in time. While I experienced a time glitch at work last year in May 2021, it was not my first time-related glitch in the Matrix. My first glitch related to time took place at the library at the University of California, Santa Barbara, during my first year of college. Note, this is a rather detailed composition of my experience. Originally, I had written about it near the time of the event in an email before forwarding it across several email accounts, then finally transferring the story to my long-defunct online journal. Rest in peace, Zanga, and the blog section of MySpace. I finally decided to share this publicly, with a few present-day details. I attended UCSB from 2000 to 2004. I barely went out in order to not spend any money if possible, and probably used all the credits on my meal plan for the school year. Quick shout out to Ortega Dining Commons for the takeout meals that sustained me during some all-night cramming sessions. As a bookish student, I spent a lot of time at Davidson Library in my freshman year, choosing the floor I would study at with no rhyme or reason. By the end of the school year, I could honestly say that I have studied on each floor of the library at least once, including inside the spectacular Pacific View room on the 8th floor. Halfway into the first quarter of the school year, in the middle of October 2000, I began preparing for my midterms. I was not the type of person who could study at home, treating my dorm room at Santa Rosa Residence Hall as my bedroom and nothing else. The glitch took place after I had taken half of my midterms. I had taken 2 of my midterms in as many days so far, and met up with my roommate at Ortega for lunch at around noon. Afterward, we parted ways as he headed for the University Center, UCEN, to start his shift at the bookstore, thanks to a work-study program, while I headed for Davidson Library. I entered the library through the Davidson entrance since, at the time, it was the main entrance to the library. Showing my age, as major renovations saw the construction of a new library entrance and wing a decade after I graduated and left the school. I headed for the Ocean Elevators, a set of 3 elevators with access to all 8 floors of the library tower, and pressed the up button. The middle elevator opened immediately. I stepped inside, turned around, and pressed the button for the 8th floor. After a short wait, The elevator doors closed, and I went up to the 8th floor alone without stopping on any of the floors in between. When the elevator doors opened on the 8th floor, I stepped outside the elevator, took 2 steps, and abruptly stopped in my tracks. I was surrounded by the exposed concrete floor slab, save for the elevated tile flooring I was standing on directly in front of the elevator. There was construction equipment and bags of masonry material everywhere, but there were no walls or windows to speak of. Undoubtedly, the place I ended up in was under construction and open to the elements. I went back inside the elevator to see which floor I was on, and the LED panel showed a number 8 with a down arrow. Tentatively, I went back outside and walked straight from the elevator due west towards the edge of the apparent construction area. In the distance, I saw the setting sun slowly dipping below the horizon of the Pacific Ocean. If you go to the beach to watch the sunset at UCSB, over the course of the year, you'll see that thanks to the tilt of the Earth, the sun sets over the Pacific Ocean during the colder winter months and over the California mainland during the warmer spring and summer months. Seeing the sunset caught me off guard almost right away, since it was not supposed to occur for several more hours. After all, my roommate and I had left the dining commons together at about 5 minutes before 1 p.m. so that he wouldn't be late for work. I was further shocked by something else I saw, or rather didn't see. I looked down at the USEN by the campus lagoon, and Stork Tower was not there. I mean, there is no way anyone on campus could overlook a bell and clock tower that stands at 175 feet or 53 meters, let alone from the vantage point of the 8th floor of the library. I turned to my right, looking due north, and I saw the peaks of the Santa Ynez Mountains covered in snow. As far as I knew, no precipitation of any kind had yet fallen in the Santa Barbara area since the beginning of the school year. Never mind any rain in the local beach areas, and especially not any snow in the local mountains. While I stared at the snow-covered mountains, a small plane emerged from just below my field of vision and gained altitude, apparently taking off from the local airport. After the plane disappeared from sight, I looked down and saw the rooftop of the original 2-story library, adjacent to the library tower. I did an about-face and looked due south towards the Pacific Ocean. In the distance, I saw Santa Cruz Island of the Channel Islands archipelago just off the coast. When I looked down, I was stunned to find that the 4-story wing built just south of the library tower was missing. In its place were far more bicycle racks than I remember seeing previously, as these bike racks extended from the bike path to the edge of the library tower. By the way, I had only been on the 8th floor for about 2 minutes or so I was somewhat surprised when I saw that the doors of the elevator I took were still open as I turned around. While taking all of this in, I snapped back to my purpose of being there at the library in the first place, and promptly headed due east, behind the elevators, where the Pacific View room should have been. Unfortunately, this area was also under construction. I looked over this edge of the concrete floor slab and saw Webb Hall below. Given the distance between the library and Webb Hall, another building could very well fit in the open space. I looked up and in the distance saw the Mesa, an expansive neighborhood in the city of Santa Barbara. UCSB is technically in the city of Goleta, but that's a story for another time. The neighborhood diverted my attention for something I was not expecting to see: streetlights. The apparent sunset meant that streetlights were slowly turning on throughout the city as it became evening. I was not going to get caught in the darkness of an apparently unfinished library floor that did not have electricity or lights, nor did I want to stick around in a place and time that was very different from the one I came from. I headed for the very elevator I took, since its doors were still open, and pressed the 1 button. The doors promptly closed and I headed back downstairs. As I made my way down, I had come to the disconcerting conclusion that some way, somehow, I went back in time. It wasn't just an abrupt change in time of day either. I briefly ended up in the past when the library tower was still under construction, while Stork Tower and the 4-story wing of the library did not yet exist. When I reached the first floor, I stepped outside the elevator and looked to my right. I saw the long passageway connecting the library tower to the original library. Adjacent to the elevators were several payphones as well as a dorm phone. My roommate and I opted not to get a landline for our dorm since we had cell phones anyway. I turned to my left and walked towards the entrance I had just walked through mere minutes ago. To my enormous relief, I saw the current serials section, which houses printed magazines, journals, and newspapers, and is located on the lower level of the first floor of the 4-story wing. Next to the entrance of this section is a staircase leading to the Ethnic and Gender Studies section on the second floor of the same wing. There were lots of people on the staircase going in both directions as I headed for the exit. I looked through the glass doors and realized that not only was I back in the present time, but also the same time of day as when I arrived there just 5 minutes ago. As I stepped outside of the library, soaring between Gervitz Hall and the music library was Stork Tower. I walked towards the tower and paused upon arriving at the entrance of the music library. I continued looking up at Stork Tower, still pondering what I had seen while up in the library tower. I went inside the USEN, found a table outside a cafe, and studied for my third midterm until 5 p.m. when my roommate got off work at the bookstore. He was surprised to see me, of course. Over dinner back at Ortega, I told him everything that I experienced just after lunch that day. He was skeptical, but he ultimately believed me, especially because he felt that my earnest recollection of that day's events over the years, we still keep in touch to this day, was the only time he sensed fear in me. This was the one and only such event I ever experienced during my time at UCSB. I've been to the 8th floor of the library tower countless times since I graduated, but I never went back in time again. I've taken my roommate and our friends there. I took my family there when my sister was exploring colleges. My sister ended up going to UCSC. She'd rather be a banana slug than a guaco. I've taken classmates and even a girlfriend there. Sadly, I was not able to replicate my experience of going back in time with any of them. During the elevator rides to the 8th floor, I would secretly hope that the doors would open to a construction site with random but prominent features from the university skyline missing in all directions, only to be disappointed upon seeing the scale model of the university as soon as the elevator doors opened on the 8th floor, and ultimately, a long ago fully built library floor with a spectacular view of the Pacific Ocean each and every time. Case notes. File number 578. It's always elevators, isn't it, where these weird time anomalies happen. I recall a story I read quite a while ago, maybe a year ago now. It was this child that took an elevator, got off on a floor, and found that it was in the far past. She went to the room her parents had booked, and it was just an old lady there. They even had the cops come, and the cameras confirmed that she never got off on the floor, at least in her timeline. She just didn't exist for those moments in current time, much like in your case. For those few minutes you spent in the past, you truly didn't exist in the current time. The striking question to ponder is, if you took any action while in the past, would it affect your current timeline? This is of course where time paradoxes emerge. Likely no, you'd have been in a parallel universe, in the past of that universe. But then, when you return to your normal timeline, were you still in that universe's current timeline, or did you go back to your original? And what's the catalyst? Why does it happen so frequently with elevators? And who's facilitating these transfers? It doesn't strike me as a natural force of the universe. It strikes me as something requiring deliberate input from an entity beyond the 4 dimensions we occupy. Call this God or angels, server developers, whatever you want. I don't think this is happening at random. And I don't think it's just a force of the universe. Because by definition, this is exceeding the bounds of the universe. Case file number 579, written by Aid MCY. The extra-dimensional entities stole my food. So I was in my house alone with my sister, and we decided to order in some takeaway food. She decided not to have anything, but I was still hungry, so I ordered myself some extra food for the next day. The food arrives like normal, and I go up to my bedroom and eat it. I don't use a plate, but I use the bag it came in. After a while, I've eaten enough food, as much as I can, and placed the bags of extra food on my desk, right beside my bed. I go up to the bathroom and talk to my sister about something, and when I return to my room, the bag of food is gone. I laugh to myself, thinking my sister must have come in and taken some food, or have put it away somewhere in the kitchen. But no. She hasn't moved since I had the food and has no idea where it is. I ask her a few more times and she continues to tell me that she doesn't know where the food is. After this, I go into my bedroom and look everywhere. Under the desk, under the bed, in every drawer that I know it couldn't be in, but it's nowhere. So now it's been a few months and I never found a bag of missing takeaway in my bedroom. My bedroom is very small, it doesn't even have a wardrobe. So now I live in fear that a bag of food is rotting in my room somewhere that I just cannot see or even smell. All the windows and the door in my room were closed, and I definitely did not move the bag from the desk before leaving the room. So it just vanished or glitched out of existence. Case file number 580, written by Jason Power Z, when 5 people vanish without a trace. So I should start by saying that I'm a healthy, sane, 18-year-old male. I've never had hallucinations or been seriously sick in my life. I've also never been known to black out or take micro naps. My mother has schizophrenia, but as far as I know, it was pretty mild and I've never shown symptoms of it. With that out of the way, here's what happened. So I was hanging out with my significant other before they went to class, college, and before I had to go to work. We parted ways and I got on the bus to go home to get ready. I got on the bus with 5 other people and I sat in the back as I usually do, so all 5 were in front of me. I looked down to check my phone when the bus started to move, so I could check the route because I'm a nervous person and I wanted to make sure I was on the right route. I was. I looked up after maybe 30 seconds, and I'm absolutely sure the bus hadn't stopped to let anyone off. Somehow though, all 5 people I got on with were just gone. The only people on the bus were me and the driver. It freaked me out a good bit because the next bus stop was still up ahead, so there's no way the bus stopped and just let people off in the middle of the street. I checked my phone again to get my mind off of it, and then suddenly the bus turned into a different street, which is weird since the route had no turns. It was a straight line. I'm very much into horror, so my immediate thought was, crap, I guess I'm going to hell? I signaled that I wanted to get off though, and the driver let me off without saying anything. I've been thinking about this all day and I still have no idea what could have happened there. I know this isn't really as creepy as some other stories on here, but this genuinely did scare me and I needed to talk about it. Bonus file, written by Inafray 19, Dreams More Dangerous Than Hell Itself. I'll preface this by saying I've had paranormal experiences my whole life, as has my brother, dad, and his mom. My grandparents bought land back in the mid-60s and built their house there, one of the first houses on this country road, and one of the first 100 in the area. At the turn of the century, the area was a large deer hunting lodge. I've never fully felt comfy at my grandparents' house. I was always afraid to walk down the hallway to the bedrooms, and as far as I can remember, have only ever done it with the lights on. I never felt comfy in the boys' room after dark. When I was little and stayed with them, I could only sleep in the girls' room with the nightstand light on, the door open, and the bathroom light on, illuminating the hallway. In 2008, when the market crashed, we had to move in with them for a year. My parents took the girls' room, and my brother and I took the boys' room. My brother slept on the bed, and I slept on the trundle. When my brother was home for the night, I slept just fine, but when he was gone, I would have to sleep with the cabinet lighting on. So my brother moved out before the rest of us. I decided to move to the main bed as it was more comfy. One night I finally said, I'm just being a baby with the light. I'm going to turn it off tonight, and I bet I'll be perfectly fine. Yeah, that was a mistake. I turn the lights off, hunker down, and fall asleep. At one point, I feel like I wake up, and there's someone in the room with me. I'm laying flat on my back. I turn my head, and this little boy, maybe 8-ish, is sitting on the chair across the room. He's wearing knickers and what I would describe as 1920s to 1930s clothing. We start talking, kind of like you would if you encountered a child alone at the park. Hello there, what's your name? What are you doing here? It's pretty innocent. Then the boy's demeanor changes. He asks me why I killed him. I'm shocked and I say, I didn't kill you. He insists. I insist. Then he stands up and starts slowly walking towards me, telling me I was his nanny and I drowned him and hid his body. I kept insisting that was not me. I've never killed anyone and also never been in any. This happens while he slowly crosses the 4 feet to my bed. I'm still laying flat on my back, scared silly at how insistent he was, how malicious he seems, and him coming close to me. Then he climbs on the bed, straddles my body, leans in close to my face and says, "You deserve this for killing me." He wraps his hands around my throat and starts strangling me while telling me over and over that I killed him. At this point, my brain said that I'm not awake. I'm still asleep. I need to open my eyes. Then I'm screaming in my head, "Open your eyes!" It was super hard. I could not get my eyes to open. I'm struggling for breath from being strangled while being told I killed this boy. Then it clicks in my brain that if I cannot open my eyes, I need to wake myself up in another way and start trying to move any part of my body. I feel like I'm laying still but also rocking side to side, trying to make my voice work, anything. The rocking finally worked and my eyes opened for real. I sit bolt upright in bed, reach up and flick the lights on. I'm sitting on the bed, hyperventilating, freaking out. Once I calm down enough to lay back down, I try closing my eyes and I can see the boy sitting back in the chair, just smiling the most sinister smile at me. I ended up staying awake the rest of the night. When I finally got up to go to the bathroom, I had a faint red mark around my throat. I never slept with the light off again and moved out as quickly as I could afford. My dad, who grew up in that house, has night terrors. He says a demon is trying to get him, that he wakes up and they come at him while he's laying in bed. My entire life I've been woken in the middle of the night to my dad screaming. My mom tells me how he starts rocking side to side or flinging his arms out, then sits bolt upright, screaming. I now know exactly what he means. I understand the rolling side to side and the trying to scream yourself awake. I've never experienced anything in my life as scary as that little boy. Even having my own child disappear at a park and frantically trying to find him for 20 minutes was not as scary as that little boy. Since moving out, I have not been back to that house nor slept in it. I have never experienced anything remotely close to this before or since. Case notes, bonus file. So a point here, would a spirit confuse you, a random person decades older and separated in facial features, for his nanny who drowned him? Doubtful. My gut here, especially given that your father was also being tormented, presumably not by the same scenario as you, but by the same entity, is this is indeed some malevolent force. I don't think it's a kid that died, a demon perhaps, or a poltergeist. Not only to physically cause you harm, but even implant psychological torture by trying to make you feel guilty over the death of a child. Also, initially I thought this could be sleep paralysis, but it doesn't fit on the second passing. The first problem is in sleep paralysis, you're consciously awake and aware of your body in the real world, unable to move, not still within the realm of a dream but aware of the dream. That would be more like lucid dreaming or lucid nightmaring, and it would be induced by this entity. And if it was sleep paralysis, you wouldn't have had markings around your neck. You couldn't have strangled yourself if you were paralyzed.